wants to get started.
How do we practice as a lay person? I find it very difficult to practice Dhamma, perfect precepts and Sila. As a lay person, how do I don't know, Ajahn. I find it very difficult.
Well, it's not impossible. You have to be determined.
I don't have a teacher without a teacher, and I understand the Dhamma, the teaching, and his come to practice is very hard. Interacting with other people and the world, things happening in the world.
Well, again, you have to tell yourself, other people are able to do this, why can't I? A lot of people have a lot harder situations than you do. There are many people whose situations in life are much harder than yours. They're still able to observe the precepts. So they must have figured out how to do it, and it's not impossible. But just have to make up your mind. Start with the precept number 4, the precept against lying. And, okay, whatever you say is going to be true, as far as you know. And really hold to that. And then learn. As I said, there are times when someone will abuse the information you have, so you don't want to give that information to them. Well, how do you keep from giving that information, but at the same time you don't lie? That's the challenge there. But there's no way you can make this easy unless you start making it easy for yourself. Trying to figure out, how can I do this? How can I be determined enough? Because the determination makes all the difference. So if you notice that you're breaking the precepts, ask yourself, what would cause me to break the precepts? What has caused me to break the precepts? And looking back on the situation, how can I avoid making that mistake again? And that way you learn from your mistakes. That's the only way it can be done.
Sometimes when I meditate, I have some obstacles like this. It's very hard life. I understand the path, I understand everything. I just come to the practice.
You just say, well, again, if you've failed in the past, ask yourself, well, why did I fail? What can I possibly do differently next time? You might start making a journal about mistakes I have made. And how I would prevent myself from doing that mistake the next time. Big journal. Yeah. But how else are you going to learn?
Yes.
I had a student one time, when I was teaching at Chiang Mai University, back when I was a layperson, I taught English literature. And one of the books I gave the kids to read was something about Ford Madox Ford. Does anyone know here? Know him? The author, British author, wrote around early 20th century. And there's a book he wrote called The Good Soldier. And the book is basically the story of a man who's got some secrets. He's telling the story, but he also wants to keep some secrets. And so it's in the course of getting to incidents in the story where it implicates him, he will jump over them or jump back. And so the narration is not chronological. And so I set out the storyline for the kids, and I said, okay, this is actually what happened. Now what we're here to do is to study the narrator. And even then, with all the help I was giving them, they were complaining. One day, this one woman said, Ajahn, why are you giving us such difficult things to learn? And I said, well, if I give you easy things, what are you going to learn? And it was like this light bulb went bing over her head. So the Buddha teaches you the precepts so you can learn.
If I hold the precepts perfect, my meditation is really good. If I break the precepts, I can see the side effect of that meditation. I can see like it's hard.
Well, nobody promised it was going to be easy, but it's not impossible. And you should keep reminding yourself, okay, I know that if I break the precepts, I'm going to suffer further down the line. But just make up your mind, I'm not going to do that to myself.
I'm very grateful to people who are on me, the ones who are like my husband and some relatives, like my cousins, they don't keep the precepts or anything.
That's their business.
I stop interrupting these people because it's affect my meditation. It's like when I go to my son's school, I had interrupted the parents and they don't keep precepts. Sometimes when I break my fourth precept because I have interrupted them.
No, you don't have to break your fourth precept. No. No, just because they're breaking the precept doesn't mean you have to. You really got to be doing, these are my precepts, I can't let other people break them. I'm the one who's breaking them.
Like my fourth precept, if somebody started gossip or something, then I just like nod my head like not to say anything.
You just listen and then try to change the topic. And the precept is not against gossiping, it's against lying.
Like talk about other opinions.
Yeah, so be very careful not to misrepresent the truth.
Yesterday night you talked about the state of uprootment if one goes to, passes on with the mind state of I don't want to be reborn. Could you just speak a bit more about this? Like, is it a hell realm? Is it?
It's not hell, it's one of those weird realms that doesn't fit very easily into the map. But it's one of the realms, it's based on a strong concentration that I just really don't want to come back. And there are some people who, when they meditate, will go into the state of totally just blanking out. Now, there are several kinds of blanking out. There's what's called delusion concentration, where it's just a very mild kind of blurring out. But this is totally blanking out. And some of the symptoms are, say you make up your mind you're going to finish meditating at 10 o'clock, you get down into the state, and bing, it feels like 2 seconds, it may have been 2 hours, but you come out automatically at 10 o'clock. And while you're in that state, there's no sights, no sounds, no smells, you have no sense of your body at all. And some people really like it. Some people think it's nirvana. But it's not, it's a state of non-perception. And it's mentioned in the canon, but the canon never gives a clear map of the cosmos, at least the sutras don't. That's not the Buddha's interest. He gives you ideas about how your actions will correspond to different states. And I got stuck on this state for a while. One of the things that can induce it is if you go without sleep for quite a while. And then the mind just really needs to rest and it will go down like that. And I got stuck on it for a while. And every time a Dharma talk would come on, this is what induced it. I had to stay at Vimokkharam for a while. They have a roster of 14 monks who would give Dharma talks, and out of those 14 monks, maybe 2 could give good Dharma talks, and the rest would just, he didn't want to hear them. And so we tried to figure out some way, what can I do to not hear these Dharma talks? And so one night it was boom, went down. And boom, came out 10 o'clock. And the next night, boom, 10 o'clock. And so I mentioned it to Ajahn Fuang. His first question is, do you like it? And part of me liked it, and part of me felt kind of groggy afterwards. And I said, well, no, don't really like it. And he says, good, because as I said, some people think it's nibbana. But then he talked about how he used that kind of concentration when he went into for an operation. They were going to remove one of his kidneys. And so he asked them, at what time is the operation going to be over? And they gave him a time. And so he went in, came out, and they were wheeling him back into the operating theater. They had sewed him up wrong. So they had to open him up again and sew him back. So he boom, went back into that concentration. And so every time there was a Dharma talk, I got so whenever I couldn't listen to Dharma talks, a Dharma talk would start and I'd be out. Until one night, this one monk was giving a Dharma talk, and he starts out, he says, there are some people who are stuck on the state of non-perception, and I was all ears. He's talking about how you go into that state, and you can stay for a long, long time, and you come out and you're kind of bonkers, because you haven't been using your brain and haven't been using your mind for a long, long, long time. And that was what weaned me away from it.
Is that state similar to, say, you're in deep sleep? You actually have no awareness of it?
No awareness at all.
Right.
Just a tiny bit of awareness so you know that you're not asleep. But it's so small that you don't know your body, you're not thinking, nothing's happening.
May I ask if that is stated clearly in the canon that that's wrong samadhi? Has it ever been stated so clearly before? Or?
It's listed as one of the places where you can go, the state of non-perception. And one of the ways you can get into that would be basically just saying, this is not going to occur to me, this is not going to happen to me, I'm just going to stop, let go, and boom, go down. That's all that's said. They don't talk about it that much.
Right, but there was no judgment on whether there was...
Well, it's not put in the list of right concentration, so...
Ajahn, isn't the dhammas of the mind, it's like mind will be bound?
No, this is very different. This is totally blanked out.
You want to sometimes it's like when I do meditation, so I have no idea when I like do the meditation, you want to like my hands go like that, face.
Okay, I mean, right concentration, you're alert to what you're doing. You have to know where you are, what you're focused on. Wrong concentration is where there's no alertness.
What is your perception of the Buddhist scene in Australia so far then?
What I've seen is nice. I mean, I could imagine staying here for a little while and enjoying it. The problem is I have a monastery back in the States I'm responsible for. And a lot of people I'm responsible for. I can't just run away.
Holiday camp.
Ajahn, I saw you yesterday, you were in the Sherwood Forest. Do you like the forest?
Yeah, it was very nice. For me, it's very exotic. The trees just don't resemble anything I know from back home. Someone was commenting last night that I have an accent. What's funny about an American accent?
It's R.
R's, the R's. The R's, okay.
What about the Australian accent? What do you think?
What do I think?
Yes. What do you think?
We've had Australian visitors at the monastery, kind of one at a time, and this is a whole room full of. Yeah. No, I kind of like the Australian accent. The one thing that strikes me as weird though is knowing. When people say no, they sometimes say knowing.
No.
Yeah. Noi.
No.
Noi.
No.
Yeah, no is noi.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No. Got it. Okay.
Is the mic switched on again?
Is the mic?
Is the mic switched on?
Yes. Yes. I have to hold it very close. No Dhamma questions?
ถามภาษาไทยได้ไหม
ได้
พระอาจารย์คะระหว่างความรู้สึกกับจิตเราอะค่ะแต่ความรู้สึกเราเราแยกได้แต่จิตบางทีมันดึงหาแล้วเรารู้สึกว่าเราจะถอยกลับมาเป็นเมนเทนสิ่งที่เราตั้งใจไว้ค่ะเราจะทำยังไงให้ความคิดเราแข็งแรงกว่าฟีลลิ่งเราค่ะ
ก็ต้องใช้สติคอยระลึกอยู่เสมอว่าเราตั้งใจในทางนี้เราต้องคิดระลึกอยู่เสมอระลึกตัวพอมันเผลอนิดเดียวก็ตั้งต้นไว้เผลอนิดเดียวตั้งต้นไว้แล้วก็พอรู้สึกตัวว่าเผลออย่าปล่อยให้มันเที่ยวสักพักหนึ่งจึงค่อยกลับมาพอรู้สึกตัวทันทีกลับมาทันทีสติของเราจะเข้มแข็งขึ้นมา
I have a question for that. When you're meditating alone, how would you know if you're going on the right path or not?
Okay, well, you can. One way is just measuring see the effect that the meditation is having on your attitudes as you go through the day. If your mind is more calm, more alert, Things that used to get you worked up don't get you so worked up anymore. You're able to see you're able to see your thinking clearly. It's a sign you're on the right path.
I have a question about letting go of the world, as in letting go of the senses when you're meditating. Can you explain a little bit about that process?
Okay, basically any issues in the world outside, you say, for the time being, I'm not going to be responsible for them. And when the mind gets into concentration, you'll still hear sounds, but I'm just not going to go there. I'm not going to pay any attention to them. And tell yourself, okay, if there are issues in the world that you are responsible for and you'd like to think them through, tell yourself, I will deal with those at the end of the meditation. And give yourself some time, 5 minutes, 10 minutes at the end.
Can you also use sounds as a kind of observational awareness in your meditation?
I mean, there are people who will take a sound as a meditation object. It's not, you don't learn much from it. It's a concentration exercise where you just stay with that one sound. Working with the breath, you have more opportunities to play with the breath, to adjust the breath, to see what kind of effect it has. And this way you're learning about cause and effect, in which case you're developing both concentration and discernment at the same time.
I guess my question then would be, when you're letting go of those senses, including the ears, eyes, and other senses, it sort of leads toward blanking out, and I suppose I don't want to do that.
No, you don't want to blank out. I mean, when you're a child and you're reading a book and your mother wanted to come and talk to you, didn't you learn how to say "mm-hmm" at the right spots? It's the same sort of thing. You know what's going on outside, but you just say, I'm just not going to pay attention. I've got something more important here. You're not trying to blank out your ears or blank out your sense of the body. Just that you don't pay any attention. It's like a conversation over in that corner of the room. You've got work to do here. You focus on your work. And you'll know that there's the conversation going on, but you don't have to block it out and make it go away.
Some people describe it, concentration, as also a similar word would be absorption. Would that be accurate?
Well, again, the question is what you mean by absorption. If you're really totally involved in one topic, that would count as absorption. And it doesn't mean that, again, that your ears have to fall deaf, but just that you really are fascinated and really are interested in this one topic, and it pulls all of your attention.
Is there a strain that's involved in that activity?
Well, there's going to be some pressure in keeping yourself there with that one thing. But as you're getting the sense of well-being that comes from being fully involved in that one topic, compared to your ordinary everyday activities, it's very pleasant and very relaxing. And as you get more and more used to it, then you begin to realize, oh yeah, there is a certain element of effort that's in here. And then you ask yourself, to what extent can I maintain concentration and not have to exert that effort? And in this way you sort of peel your way down to deeper and deeper levels of concentration.
I guess there is a sort of balance to be made between relaxation and then the focus.
Right, because if you totally relax and there's no focus, then you're gone. So you have to maintain just enough pressure on your mind to maintain the focus.
The other day I mentioned to Ajahn that often in the presence of great teachers, there's a sense of fullness in the heart that comes very close to Ajahn's description of being full and having a really nice bus stop and not running away with crazy people that come up to you. And you mentioned that, and when you're unable to do that for yourself in your own meditation, Ajahn, you mentioned that we should utilise these opportunities to help us. Can you just elaborate on how we should utilise these opportunities?
Well, notice that when you're in the atmosphere of someone or some place that induces that kind of feeling, how are you breathing? Where are you focused? And then when you go away, can you recreate that same sense of breath, that same sense of focus? And part of it is when you're in an environment that really absorbs you, and this is not just people, but sometimes there are locations that have that ability to sort of make you feel like the world is cut off and things outside don't matter anymore. Tell yourself, how could I talk myself into believing this when I'm back in the midst of these things? You have to, and this is where what I talked about this morning when I talked about what's called verbal fabrication, where the way you're talking to yourself will make a big difference in how you, as you go through the world. You know, your boss is yelling at you, you just see the words go past.
Okay, so it's useful in those moments to observe what's going on within your body,
right.
How your breath is working in
right,
that
right.
moment. So you can
And then you can be creative and see if you can recreate that same sense of energy when you're off someplace else.
Yeah.
One of the advantages of having a monastery in California is that you go to the American Southwest, and there's a lot of big, open, desolate places where you can practice. And I found that some places really are friendly and others are unfriendly. It may have to do with the way American Indians were treated by white people. They see this whitey coming in. And so if you can't find a person who can create that atmosphere for you, see if you can find some places that you find conducive to settling down.
John, yesterday you mentioned that you had someone who had childhood trauma that got in the way of their meditation. And I find that to be accurate and kind of hinders higher levels of practice. How would you recommend overcoming that?
Well, one is just finding one spot in the body that doesn't feel threatened and say, okay, let me make this my beachhead. And then gradually let the area of the body grow so that you feel more, or find other spots in the body where you feel that, okay, like your tailbone, the soles of your feet, palms of your hands, something like that. And get so that you, bit by bit by bit, you feel more secure in the body.
I find in meditation the repressed memories come up, which is very overwhelming.
Yeah. This is where you have to have lots of goodwill for everybody. The repressed memories. You say, these things that happened to me, okay, someone else did them to me, but I must have the karma that allowed that to happen. And this karma goes back, I don't know how far, how many, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And so the Buddhist says the best way to overcome that is just have lots of goodwill for the other side, lots of goodwill for yourself. So forgive yourself for whatever karma you did to contribute to that. And make up your mind, I'm not going to continue the back and forth. And that's the best you can do. But seeing it as a larger pattern, I mean, think about the Buddha on the night of his awakening. He started out with all these stories about his past lifetimes. We have enough stories in this lifetime, imagine aeons and aeons of stories. And he didn't stay there with the stories. Before going into the present moment, he then stepped back and thought about the whole cosmos. All beings were going through this. It was because of their actions. And once he had that larger perspective, then he could come into the present moment without this sense of personal trauma. Seeing the world is full of back and forths like this. I mean, this is what living beings do to one another. And so it's not just you, it's not just the people who perpetrated whatever they did to you. It's the larger picture. And anytime you find that the stories that you have are getting oppressive, think about the larger picture. Then come into the present moment.
Ajahn, so can you, in this connection with these people, the abusers, like the people who abuse them, evil kid, like emotionally, physically, like parents and all the bullies, can we end the karmic connection in this life?
Well, you just spread lots of goodwill to yourself, lots of goodwill to them. And in some cases you say, I want whatever karma I have with this person, I want to be done with this lifetime. If it's pretty heavy, you may say, well, maybe you stretch it out a little bit so it's not too oppressive. Because I knew this one monk he was a very difficult monk to deal with. And he was staying alone in the forest one time, and he's having his meal one morning, and something grabbed him by the back of his neck, pulled his head up and said, look. And on the wall opposite him, it's like this motion picture suddenly played of all the things he'd done in the past. And it was he'd been pretty violent. And the voice said, okay, do you want to get rid of this in this one lifetime, or you go spread it out through a few lifetimes? He said, well, I wanted to get it done in one lifetime. He got really sick for years. So you may not want to get it all done in one lifetime.
I have issues with my mother. I don't speak to her because we have some issues. Like I had in my meditation a dream about the past life. I think like we have like I don't talk to her anymore. Like I don't have the hatred anymore. But I just want to end this calm connection with her and her family.
Okay, just you can make a vow. Okay, whatever karmic connection I still have, I'd like to have it ended. And I'm not going to create any new karma. Leave it at that.
Such I don't speak to her. You don't care. Like I don't have any connection.
You don't have to have any connection. You can't go up and say, I want to end our karmic connection. You can't say that to somebody. You just stop it from your side.
John, can I ask you one question, Sir?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, my voice is a little loud because I'm a little deaf, so my voice is a little loud.
Mm-hmm.
What does one mean if one would say, according to my Dhamma practice, I have unshakable faith in the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha? Would you elaborate a little on that, please?
Okay, it depends on how honest they are with themselves about how unshakable their faith is. I mean, the only people who really have unshakable faith have gained stream entry. They've gained the Dharma eye. They've seen that what the Buddha taught was true. There is a deathless happiness. And that would be enough reason for them to say no more shaking in their faith. Other people say, I have no shaking in my faith, but that's because they're just very, very convinced. So it can mean, depending on who's saying it, what it means. But the real valid reasons for not having any doubts about the Buddha at all would be that you've gained stream entry, you saw that the path that he taught there is the correct path, and that there really is this deathless element that you can contact in the mind. Someone once went to Ajahn Geoff Monastery. And in Ajahn Geoff Monastery, if you say that, I have no doubts about the Buddha, it's a claim for stream entry. And so they asked him, do you have any doubts about the Buddha? He said, oh no, I have no doubts about the Buddha. So they went and they reported this to Ajahn Geoff, and Ajahn Geoff said, I have no doubts about what I don't see. You didn't take a picture of that, did you?
Ajahn, continuing about what you said about stream entry, could you perhaps elucidate on the mindset of one who has not attained the fruit of stream entry versus one who has, in how they conceptualize the world and how they act externally? Could you just sort of give some examples?
In the terms of their external actions, people who've gained stream entry would not intentionally break the 5 precepts. For sure. No. Their mindset is that they've seen that there is a deathless happiness. They've seen that the present moment is a construct that you put together, like I mentioned this morning, that influences come from the past, but it's how you put them together in the present moment that shapes your experience of the present moment. If you don't do that, there's no experience of the present moment. But there's this intense consciousness of the deathless. And so they've seen that. And they come back from that. Now, people who've gained stream entry can still, like Lady Visakha was still upset when her grandchildren died. In fact, there are some stream enterers who behave in ways that are not all that inspiring. Mahapajapati came to the Buddha one time with a robe. And she said, I want to give this to you. And the Buddha says, give it to the Sangha. I want to give it to you. Give it to the Sangha. I want to give it to you. And apparently she was a stream enterer at that point. So certain personality quirks don't go away. There's another one, a guy whose name was Roja. He came to see the Sangha one time. And Ananda was surprised because Roja had never expressed any interest in the Sangha at all before. And he said, well, it's good to see you here. And Roja said, well, I'm not here because I wanted to be here. It was because I was going to be fined if I didn't come. And so Ananda says, this is disgraceful. to himself. So he goes to see the Buddha. He says, is there anything you can do to instill a little bit more faith in this person? So can you imagine, 100% full Buddha strength, goodwill, to Roja. And all of a sudden Roja, I've got to find the Buddha, where's the Buddha right now? So he goes to see the Buddha. The Buddha gives him a Dharma talk and he becomes a stream enterer. And the first thing he says after stream entry is not, whatever is subject to origination is all subject to cessation. What he says is, from now on I want the Sangha to accept gifts from me and nobody else. So, you may have observed the 5 precepts, but stream entry does not wipe out strange personality quirks. So it's really hard to tell. I mean, John Mahaprabhu in Thailand is famous for certifying that so-and-so is a non-returner, so-and-so was an arahant. Ajahn Suwat was one of the people he certified as an arahant. And Ajahn Suwat mentioned one time, he says, when he said that, it was not the case. So it's really, really hard to tell from outside who is and who isn't. But one thing you can know, if someone intentionally breaks the 5 precepts, they're not awakened. Anyone who says it's okay to lie, they're not awakened. Any other questions?
So it does not necessarily need to be hand in hand with a certain meditative experience, say for example, seeing bones everywhere, whoever you see. So it may not necessarily be.
You have to have that experience of touching the deathless.
So that is
That's experience, yeah.
I was contemplating to ask the question about, since we are all on the similar topic. I ponder the impression, early days, my impression is that you have to be a Buddhist, develop the faith, then only we can be a stream enterer. But then when I look back at stories like how Sariputta met Asaji, and then for one discourse he became a stream enterer. That's the point where that's before he met Buddha.
Right.
Ongalala the same, and there was a ascetic nun that debate on Buddhism, which means, with technology today, anybody, a seeker, can actually listen to Dhamma talk or listen to different sadguru or whatever. But if that person do have the qualities, they can become a stream enterer, then only they go to a Buddhist center and say, I want to find out more, correct?
Right. The most famous case is Bukkasati, a monk named Bukkasati. He heard about the Buddha and was inspired, and so he goes off and becomes a monk. And one night the Buddha is wandering around alone, and he stops off at this potter's house and says, can I stay in your shed tonight? And the potter says, yes, but there's another contemplative already there. If he allows you to stay there, it's okay. So the Buddha comes in and asks, can I spend the night here too? And Bukkasati says, sure, and no problem, there's room. And so they both sit late into the night, and the Buddha says, his behavior is very inspiring, what if I ask him questions? So he says, who's your teacher? And Bukkasati says, the Buddha. And have you ever met the Buddha? No. Do you know where he is now? I think he's up there in Savatthi. And can I teach you the Dharma? Oh, sure, go ahead if you want. And so the Buddha teaches him the Dharma. In the course of teaching the Dharma, Bukkasati becomes a non-returner. That's when he realized, oh, this is the Buddha.
But is it possible that person, like for example, maybe a Christian, very compassionate and do a lot of good, that have had the experience, and still become a stream enterer as such, but still
they wouldn't want to be a Christian anymore.
not Buddhist. It's like I'm a bit confused whether a person is we are branding someone a Buddhist and a Christian, but actually
there was so much in Christianity that they would not be able to stomach anymore after that. There's so much in Christianity that they would not be able to stomach as a result of that experience. It's like, I've got to find a teaching that's more in line with what I've experienced now.
when I was visiting Sakti Monastery in Sydney, there was someone came, just dropped by to have a look at the monastery and ask questions. He had a near-death experience, and he says after the experience, he's completely transformed his life. He realized things are so unreal, material, so on, so he gave away his wealth and he does a lot of charity, blah, blah, blah. But he says he has spoken to a lot of people trying to understand what happened to him, nobody able to give him an explanation. So he wanted to come into a monastery and see whether any monk can give him an answer. And I thought, you know, that person had, the answer from the nun was very interesting. She explained to him, says, it seems like you have an experience but you don't have wisdom. Sounds like a good answer.
That can happen very easily. There's something that's called, it has an unfortunate name, but it's called by psychiatrists, it's called neurotic breakthrough, where someone has been suffering from a neurosis and all of a sudden it breaks. And they're freed from that particular neurosis. And for a while there's a sense of great freedom that comes with that before they develop a new neurosis. People like Eckhart Tolle, that's the kind of experience we're talking about. Again, they have the experience but without the wisdom. And an important part of stream entry is the wisdom comes along with it. Because you know how it happened, you know what you did that led there. Yeah. With near-death experiences, there was an old monk at Vimokkharam who ordained when he was old, after he retired from government service. And basically he was waiting to die. And so he had this huge collection of books on near-death experiences. And when it's his turn to give a Dharma talk, that's what he would pick up one of these books and read from it. And he had lots of different ones. But my favorite one was this one where this guy goes to what's kind of like a police station. And they check the record. Oh, it's not your time to go yet. You can go back to Earth. And the guardian who brought him there said, would you like to see a little bit of heaven or hell before you go? He said, yeah, I'd like to see heaven. And so they take him up. And heaven, in his imagination, in his vision of it, was filled with all these devas dressed like that. And so he asked the guardian, is this only for Buddhists? And the guardian said, no, we have Christians here, and we have Muslims, and we have Hindus. But don't they get disturbed to see all the devas looking like this, like Thai devas? And the guardian said, we look the way you expect us to look. So people can have a near-death experience and it would confirm their beliefs. But again, it's basically their beliefs would impose an interpretation of what they're experiencing. Whereas stream entry is something different. It cuts away all past conditioning for that experience. One little footnote on that though was, my teacher had a student who was quite psychic. And she was visiting the monastery one time. And she suddenly pulled out her pocketbook and wanted to hand me some money. And Ajahn Fung asked her, you know monks can't handle money, why are you going to give him a gift of money? And he said, was it because you see that his mother's here? My mother died years before. And the woman said, no, I hadn't noticed her. He said, well, check her out. And he said, oh yeah, there she is. I've never seen anybody look like this. There was a white circle of light behind their head and were wearing white. And Ajahn Fung said, that's what Western devas look like.
Ajahn, can I just follow through Alice's question before, because I couldn't really hear everything you just spoken. So is stream entra is exclusive to Buddhism? Can I clarify that? Is that what you...
Okay, once you have experience of stream entry, Buddhism is the only teaching that would make sense. We have people in the canon who are not specifically Buddhists yet, but they hear the Dhamma, they have a stream entry experience. That experience then would make them see things, what the Buddha taught was true.
So it is essential as a fundamental requisite in the sense that a full experience with the wisdom of Dhamma.
Right. You have to be alert. You have to be alert to what did I do that got me there. You saw what you did. You saw what you let go. how you let go, and what you had experienced as a result. That would confirm, and that all is confirmed, would confirm what you would hear from the Buddha.
Please, may I give some clarification on the sutta that I have read? It's an incident where a Bhante was striving hard to liberate himself, but he was so sort of disappointed and frustrated that he wanted to commit suicide. And in that sutta says, once he was cutting his neck, he got liberated. Is it the correct way?
That's in the suttas, yes.
The sutta, I can't remember, it's Venerable Gotika.
Gotika, yeah. It appears twice in the canon.
Can it happen, Dr. Bhante?
I wouldn't recommend it.
And it says he was contemplating on the feeling of pain.
Well, we don't know what he was contemplating. The commentary gives more detail.
Yes.
All it says is that he basically used the knife. That's all the sutta says. And then the Buddha guaranteed that he was an arahant at the moment of death.
Have you translated that sutta, Bhante?
No, because it would give people bad ideas.
Only Lord Buddha would know what happened.
Only he would know, yes. So it's not advised.
Just following on from that, why would someone that close to enlightenment get to such a negative state of mind that they would want to
It's his karma. It was his karma. Their question was, why would somebody in such a negative state of mind but be that close to enlightenment? His karma was such that he would have to go through something really, really, really bad before he could come out the other side.
I have a similar question about Angulimala.
He's easier to explain.
Why would someone be in such a negative state to kill that many people if he was that close to enlightenment again?
In that particular case, when I was ordained in Thailand, I noticed there were a number of monks in the forest tradition who were really, really dedicated practitioners, and they had been criminals before they ordained. And they were the type of criminal that had gone into a life of crime because they were totally disillusioned with society, totally disillusioned with the people they met. They didn't believe in that anybody was really honest or genuinely good. And then they came across one of the Ajahns, and that sort of flipped their attitude. And then they had 100% conviction in the Ajahn. And so you have that, there's that kind of quality of, I guess you'd say, dedication that can be flipped in a right or wrong direction. And when it can go either direction, go very extreme. So in his case, he had a lot of past bad karma, but he had a lot of past good karma too. And in that case, the Buddha saw the potential. And again, it's that principle I mentioned this morning about the hunk of salt. You throw it into a large river, you could still drink the water in the river. You put it in a small cup, it's too salty to drink. Up to that point, Angulimala's mind was like a small cup. Meeting the Buddha, his mind became like the river. I think it was my second year as a monk. One of the monks at Monastery came out to me and said, "Then Jeff, you ever kill anybody?" No. I said, "I have." And he was a very dedicated meditator. That's why I say Angulimala is easier to explain.
Ajahn, is Ajahn really the Arhat or a Bodhisattva?
Who knows? I mean, I knew this one monk who lived near our monastery when he was a layperson, had gone to Thailand, ordained in the forest tradition. And then after 3 years came back to visit. And he came back with a family tree of the forest tradition, who studied with whom and what their attainments were. I told him, "You've collected the gossip of the forest tradition."
I have a question with regards to investigation. investigation. So in one of the suttas where Buddha was talking about investigating the 7 bases, he spoke about three modes of investigation. Could you elaborate on that?
Is that one where you investigate the allure and the drawbacks and the escape?
Yeah, so I think at the end section, the three modes were investigating based on properties, based on sense spheres, and based on dependent arising.
Okay, well this is basically talking about how you can divide up your experience into concepts or into different steps. And different people are going to respond to different ways of analyzing your experience. Like you notice with Mahakachana, every time he explains one of the Buddhist teachings, he always explains it in terms of the 6 sense spheres. That was the mode of analysis that spoke to him. Some people find the mode of analysis that has to do with the aggregates. Some people find the elements. John Fuang was really into elements in his explanations of things. Other people find dependent co-arising.
Could you give some examples of how that's applied?
Okay, well basically you find that you're attached to something. And a lot of our attachments have to do with the fact that we glom things together. You know, there's the event and also our perceptions around the event, our feelings around the event. And basically the Buddha is saying if you want to overcome your attachment to these things, you have to see that these are actually separate things. A clear example might be, you say you're attracted to another person. You may tell yourself, I'm attracted to that person. But maybe you're actually attracted to a perception about that person, or your feeling about that person, or your image of yourself in relationship to that person. If she's really good looking, I look really snazzy when I got this really good looking woman, that kind of thing. And it has nothing to do with her at all. And so if you can begin to say, well, exactly where is my craving located, and see, well, it's really not where I thought it was. Then you begin to understand how you really don't want to crave that anymore. It just doesn't make sense. That's why the Buddha has you divide things up like this. There's a passage where he talks about how craving creates locations. And so he asks us, when I crave something, where is the craving actually located? And sometimes it may be simply with, I want to crave something. You know, you find yourself with a few free moments and say, well, what would be entertaining to think about? Then you come up with something. And so then you realize, okay, I can create a lot of problems around this particular perception. I better let go of it. And that's when you want to look at, well, what's the allure of that perception? What are the drawbacks of focusing on that perception? When I was in college, down the hall there was a woman who competed for the Miss America contest. She came in number 2. And she was the sort of person who, she walked in the room and she knew that she was, you know, you have to feel sorry for her because it wasn't going to last forever, but for the duration of her good looks, you know, she was pretty intolerable. And for me, it's always been an object lesson. Okay, she had a boyfriend who was also very good looking, and you could hear them yelling at each other night after night after night. And so you realize, okay, they weren't really in love with each other, they were in love with their looks. They were in love with the perceptions and all the other things that had nothing to do with the actual person. So it was a real lesson.
Ajahn, I heard that you need to overcome a craving, you need to see the allure, the drawback, and the escape.
The escape, mm-hmm.
What's the escape?
Well, the escape comes from comparing the allure with the drawbacks, and you see it's not worth it. You get this little bit of allure, but then the price is too large.
So the escape is your own analysis of the situation.
Your own analysis, your own evaluation, and you come to a value judgment, it's not worth it. That's the escape.
So often if we continue to attach, it's because we haven't arrived, we haven't seen enough of the drawbacks.
One, you haven't seen enough of the drawbacks, or 2, you haven't really located where the allure is. And this is one of those things where we really tend to lie to ourselves. You know, why do you like being an architect? You could probably come up with lots of different answers. And the question is, well, which one is the true one?
And is it only through gradually refining your concentration, that you'll be able to pinpoint that bit more.
Partly it's refining your concentration, and also not letting yourself lie to yourself. You know, it'll say, why do I like this? And you say, well, I like it because of X. Is that true? Be silent for a while. It takes a while for the mind to admit certain things to itself, because we do have our likes that we're embarrassed about, that we hide from ourselves. So that's one of the reasons why, if you still haven't let go, I said, I still haven't seen the allure for what it is.
Yeah.
Either that, or I'm just not admitting the drawbacks.
Because the escape is just coming from
those two.
I'm just wondering, when you're translating the suttas, is there any suttas like you kind of wonder whether it has been added on or edited wrongly in the past, like the one that when Buddha was born, he can walk 7 steps?
I allow myself to question things every now and then.
So, is there any way that you investigate, or is that passage actually passed down?
When you're translating the sutta, you have two choices. You can translate the whole sutta, or you can translate excerpts. Excerpts. In other words, you don't translate the whole sutta. Like there's one sutta in the Majjhima Nikaya where it starts out, the Buddha gives an outline of what he's going to say. And in the actual sutta, there are more sections than there were in the original outline. And so I said, in that case, I decided to leave out the extra sections. But you let people know, these are excerpts, this is something that's been taken out. That would be one case. Yeah. But for the 7 steps, I figured, well, it's so well known, might as well just include it. But then again, there are psychic people who say that when you're born, it's not the case that you hang around with your body all the time. Maybe infants don't hang around with their bodies all that much. They're outside the body and they can move around. It's sort of what we would say is their astral body hasn't really fully entered into that little baby's body. So it might have been his astral body took 7 steps and came back.
When I was in Thailand for Katina last 2 years back, I was given a different explanation of that. They explained that the devas were very joyful, so the devas were holding his hand. So there was an image of the baby walking.
Can you imagine the mother how freaked out she would be if she saw that? No. I think the astral body explanation is a little bit more sound. Yeah. Because again, John Fung had some students who were psychic, and they could sometimes see that a woman would have this little something circulating around her. And I remember one case when this one woman asked the woman she saw that there was this little baby spirit hanging around her. She says, are you and your husband planning to have a child? And they said, well, we're thinking about it. And the woman said, it's going to be a boy. And sure enough, that's what she had seen, just kind of circulating around. And during a pregnancy, again, psychic people say they see this little thing sort of circulating around, because nobody likes being in the womb. So they kind of circulate around. And they come out and they're still circulating around the little body. It takes a while for them to come in. Or stay in, let's put it that way. Question?
Ajahn, can I ask a question? Would it be possible for the practitioner to be learning from different schools or traditions of Buddhism and still be able to progress in the path? I have listened to some of the Mahayana and Theravada Dhamma talks. Some Dhamma teachers are quite adamant about this is the way to practice, and some teachers are quite lenient about you are free to learn and absorb any kind of information or teaching. It's crucial for practitioner to
eventually decided on a path and concentrate and focus on that particular schools of teaching.
You know, as the Buddha said, it's only through the Eightfold Path that you're going to gain awakening. Now, just because the scholars in one tradition say other things, you get people who are practicing in that tradition who say, well, I'm not going to follow the scholars, I'm going to follow what seems to be right in my practice. And they basically settle on the Eightfold Path. Because you look at Thailand in the 19th century, what the forest Ajahns were doing had very little to do with what the scholars in Bangkok were teaching. This is one of the reasons why they were not accepted for a while. So again, you get in Mahayana schools, you might get people who are up on their own and they're following what turns out to be the Eightfold Path, regardless of what they've been told about Buddha nature and those other things. They just put those concepts aside.
Because from my understanding that the Mahayana and Theravada goals are quite different. So, do you see that as a conflict?
Well, again, we don't have a survey of what all the Mahayanas actually believed. Did all Mahayanas believe what's actually in the text, in Mahayana texts? Do all Theravadins believe what's in the Theravadan texts? There are people who will, pick and choose what they want out of their tradition, what seems to be working for them. And this is the nature of practice traditions. So I can see that it would be possible for, say, a Zen monk who is actually practicing the Eightfold Path, to gain stream entry or something like that. But it does require the Eightfold Path.
Thank you very much.
What is your favorite sutta?
I have 3.
Sorry?
Can I have 3?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Digha Nikaya 2. It's the one where King Jatisattu comes to see the Buddha, and the Buddha gives him probably one of the longest Dharma talks. And the king's question is, we can see that barbers and soldiers and other occupations have the fruit of their practice. What about monks? I don't see any fruit of their practice. What are they accomplishing? And so the Buddha starts out with some pretty basic stuff, and then he goes through the whole whole practice, up through the jhanas with all the analogies for the jhanas, and all through the various attainments that come as a result of that. So it lays it all out. That's one. The second one is the Jula Sunyata Sutta, where the Buddha is talking about different stages of emptiness, and how when you get in one state of concentration.
Which sutta again?
Jula Sunyata, it's Majjhima 121, where it talks about getting into concentration and then realizing there's still some disturbance in that level of concentration, so you abandon the cause of that disturbance, and you go to deeper concentration, and you keep doing that. And then Majjhima 140, the one Bukasati, where again you go through the elements, and then what you have left is the pure consciousness, which could go to the formless realms, but you decide no, you're going to go to you're going to go for the transcendent. And then that's the one where he becomes a non-returner. Those are the 3 that have always appealed to me.
In Samyutta Nikaya, Bhante, what's the best sutta?
Best sutta, Samyutta Nikaya. I don't know.
For the practitioner.
For a practitioner? I would guess Samyutta 22:2. 22:2. That's the one where these monks are leaving. No, that's 22:1. That's the one I'm thinking about. That's the man comes and sees the Buddha after he's recovered from an illness. And the Buddha says, well, as long as your body is ill, make sure your mind is not ill. And the man says, well, that's really nice teaching. So he bows down and goes. Then he goes to the Sariputta, and Sariputta says, you look like you've just gotten a Dharma talk from the Buddha. Yes, a really good one. He says, I make sure that my mind is not ill, even though my body is ill. And Sariputta says, well, did you ask him what that means? He says, no. And then he goes through about what it means to have your mind not ill. Basically, that you're not identifying with the aggregates. And that's where he defines what it means to have a self-identity view around the aggregates. So that's a really useful one. I'm running out of steam. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you for your time.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Acariye pamadena dawaratayena gatam sambang aparadam kamaduno bante. Acariye pamadena dawaratayena gatam sambang aparadam kamaduno bante. Acariye pamadena dawaratayena gatam sambang aparadam kamaduno bante.
Aham kamavik yohi udimekamitabhan.
Kamama bante.
Sitam idam phalangetasmin ratanatasmin sampasahana chaitaso. Abhivadana silisana chanutavajaya chattaro dhamma vatanti ayukondo sukham balam.